It was a humid summer afternoon in Houston, Texas, when a storage unit manager made a routine check that would forever haunt him. He was investigating a unit that had gone unpaid for months, expecting to find old furniture, dusty boxes, maybe forgotten holiday decorations. Instead, he opened the rusted metal door to a wave of decay, and then saw it. Stuffed inside a large plastic container, wrapped in duct tape and trash bags, was the badly decomposed body of a young woman. She had been dead for months. There were no immediate clues. No ID. No name. Just a rotting corpse left in the DAC, discarded like garbage. Her story could have ended there, with no one ever asking who she was, or why she ended up like that. But what came next unraveled a horrifying tale of manipulation, silence, and a system that failed her again and again. This is the case of the forgotten victim in the storage unit. On July 12, 2022, the Houston Police Department received a 911 call from a storage facility manager. A unit at the back of the property had been flagged for repossession. When staff forced open the unit, the stench was overwhelming. Inside was a heavy-duty plastic storage bin, sealed with duct tape. Authorities arrived quickly. The container was moved to the coroner's office, where a full autopsy revealed the body of a woman in her early 20s. Decomposition made facial recognition impossible, but a faded tattoo on her rib cage and a surgical pin in her ankle would prove vital later. The local news ran brief headlines: "Body found in storage unit." But the public quickly moved on. No one claimed her. No missing persons report matched. It was as if she had vanished from society long before she died. The medical examiner noted that the body had been dead for approximately 6 months. Advanced decomposition had made it impossible to determine the exact cause of death at the scene, but bruising around the neck and petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes would later suggest strangulation. For detectives, the situation was haunting. Who was this girl? How had no one come forward? And why had she been left to decay in silence? It would take nearly a month of forensic work to identify her as 23-year-old Marissa Lane, a young woman who had aged out of the foster care system 2 years earlier. She had no close family, no active job, and no social media presence for over a year. But a deeper look revealed heartbreaking patterns. Marissa had been shuffled through over a dozen foster homes since age 8. Her mother had died of a drug overdose, and her father was incarcerated for armed robbery. She had no siblings. No relatives came forward when her body was identified. She had been in and out of group homes, psychiatric evaluations, and transitional shelters throughout her teenage years. Her case files, over 600 pages long, documented neglect, trauma, and multiple suicide attempts. She was labeled as emotionally disturbed, a phrase that followed her from file to file. When she turned 18, her support network evaporated. The foster system, by law, had no obligation to keep supporting her. Though some states offer extended foster care until 21, Marissa was in Texas, where many youths are cut off abruptly, often with nothing but a list of shelters. She tried. Records show she applied for jobs, enrolled in community college classes, and even wrote in journals about her dreams of becoming a vet tech. But the reality of survival without support often dragged her into abusive relationships, temporary housing, and desperate situations. Detectives began retracing her final known contacts. Marissa had been couch surfing, living off gift cards, and was in an on-again, off-again relationship with a man named Krauss. He was 32, with a long record of petty crimes, drug use, and alleged domestic violence. Dylan and Marissa met at a halfway house in late 2020. Dylan was charismatic and charming in public, but court records showed a history of emotional manipulation, threats, and assaults on past girlfriends. None of the charges ever stuck. Victims were too afraid to testify. Neighbors of Dylan remembered seeing Marissa occasionally, but by late 2021, she seemed to vanish. When police brought Dylan in for questioning, his story was evasive. He claimed she left town to start over. He denied any wrongdoing, but a warrant to search his phone revealed disturbing texts. "She won't leave me alone. Might just fix it for good. That unit's still locked up tight. No one will know." Dylan was arrested on suspicion of murder. Marissa's friends, few as they were, described a young woman desperate for stability. She had tried working, applied to community college, and even began journaling about a fresh start. But Dylan was always there, dragging her down. In the final months of her life, she confided in a friend over text. "I think he watches me sleep. I wake up and he's just staring. I feel like I'm a prisoner." That friend reported it to a shelter coordinator, but nothing was done. The shelter was over capacity and lacked resources to intervene in what was considered a domestic issue. Witness testimony and cell data painted a grim picture. On December 16, 2021, Marissa was last seen alive. Surveillance footage later recovered showed Dylan's truck at the storage facility that same night. He stayed for over 40 minutes. Inside the unit, forensic teams found traces of blood and hair not only in the bin, but on the walls. DNA matched Marissa. It appeared Dylan had strangled her during an argument, then stored her body in the unit for months. He returned periodically to spray air freshener and bleach, but eventually stopped paying the rent. During the trial, other women came forward. Women who had once dated Dylan and had endured similar abuse. One said he had broken her nose during an argument. Another said he threatened to kill her and hide her body somewhere no one would ever look. But none of these incidents had led to jail time. Charges were dropped, witnesses disappeared, and police reports were lost. It became clear that Marissa's death wasn't a one-time incident. It was the tragic end to a long pattern of violence that had been ignored or minimized. The tragedy of Marissa Lane wasn't just about a violent boyfriend. It was about how someone could disappear in plain sight. She had no one checking on her. No family ties. No active caseworkers. Her name didn't even appear on any missing persons databases. Texas law requires law enforcement to input missing persons reports within 48 hours. But no report was ever filed. The only people who noticed her absence were casual acquaintances, some of whom assumed she had moved on or relapsed into drug use. Experts later criticized the state's foster care system, arguing that youths who age out are left completely alone, often homeless, jobless, and vulnerable. Marissa was one of thousands. Her story triggered calls for reform in Texas. A nonprofit created a scholarship fund in her name. But for many, the impact came too late. Dylan Krauss was eventually charged with second-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. In court, he showed no remorse. His defense painted Marissa as unstable, using her foster care background to justify his behavior. But the prosecution was prepared. They presented texts, phone data, surveillance footage, and expert testimony from forensic psychologists. The jury took just 3 hours to convict him. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Still, Marissa's friends asked, is that justice? What about the years she never got to live? Marissa Lane was a real person. A young woman who tried, despite every obstacle, to build a better life. And yet she ended up abandoned in a dark container, forgotten. Her case reminds us that not all victims get justice. That some are discarded without anyone even noticing. Let Marissa's story be a wake-up call. If you found this story moving, please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Hub, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Victims like Marissa deserve to be remembered. And if you suspect someone is missing or being abused, speak up. It might be the only chance they get.